Hello.
Good morning,
Good
sir.
morning.
Anybody
Good
there?
morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. So, ready for the class?
Yes, sir.
This is Sanakya.
Yes, sir.
You have given that. You have put that questions in the group.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Try to answer those questions. Day by day, you have to put one or two things that you have completed, and the target has to be reached. Okay. So,
Okay, sir.
warm welcome to you all people for this class on hearing loss evaluation and genetics in otology and neurotology. Just like it's a small brush up of what is there in the textbook, and this is important for the sake of your examination for 2 marks, 4 marks, or even 10 marks directly. But as a whole, your understanding is needed. So, as a whole, as a a citizen of this country or a citizen of this earth, we should be able to understand whether the child is having deafness or not, what is to be done, what is the early intervention to be done, so what are the problems that are caused by deafness, and what are the diagnoses that are there, what are various etiologies that are there. So how do you intervene and all? So like it's if you take the Bayesian theory, so as you could understand that the human brain is like an organized chaos, wherein a lot of problem is there when it is born, okay, as a child. So there are things that are to be trained and learnt. Suddenly, if I have to be a cricketer, I cannot be. Why? Because my brain has been trained since the last 20 years or 15 years for the medical things, and then as a surgical things as a ENT surgeon. So you cannot suddenly play cricket and become a cricketer for world's acceptance. You may play, but you may not be the best in that. So you're not an international player. In the same way, a child is born, he has got the tasks of seeing, tasks of listening, tasks of speaking. All these things have to be acquired slowly. So there is a hardware wherein software has to be injected slowly. Something like you have to listen and then speak that. So if I listen the word amma, I'll speak the word amma, like from childhood. Okay, if I listen the word Tandai in Tamil from childhood, I'll speak the word Tandai. Okay, I will not say Nana because I don't know right from childhood. My brain is fed with Tamil. Okay, so in the same way, the other words that the eyes cannot see what the mind doesn't know. The same way, the ears cannot hear the one which is not known to the brain, and the vocal cords cannot speak the ones which are not known to the brain. Okay, so hearing is very important in such an aspect, as we have been covering last time. Like we have been thinking that we have been discussing that. So it is more a worst handicap than the blindness. So you should be knowing it as early as possible, for which you should have a basic idea of all the audiology, as we have seen that it is profound hearing loss, which is more than 290 decibels. Okay, and you have to catch those children with profound hearing loss by birth itself. If it is there, you have to catch them, and then you should be able to understand whether they are hearing or not by screening tests, as we have been discussing the universal neonatal screening programs, and we have been already talking about something called as a cochlear implant. Cochlear implant is a one electromagnetic device which is put inside the cochlea with a functional, non-functional hair cells, wherein some of them are functional, wherein you can put it in the scala tympani or scala vestibuli, and to stimulate that so that they can listen from childhood, and then so that they can become a normal individual, that they are able to hear and communicate and talk. There is something called as the rehabilitation procedure for the deaf people. So for all that, you should have basic idea about these things, like in genetics, in otology and neurotology. So let me mind you should have some idea about this genetics. So of this otology, and then you should be having some information about the congenital hearing loss. So hearing loss, as it occurs in 1 in 1,000 births. Okay, the prevalence is 1 in 1,000 births. When it is a congenital hearing loss, half of them are hereditary. Half of them are hereditary. Okay. If you take congenital hearing loss, one more classification. 30% of the congenital hearing loss are associated with some amount of syndromes, syndromic hearing loss, and 70% are non-syndromic. So 30%, so 3 out of 10 cases are syndromic, and 7 out of 10 cases are non-syndromic. So some syndrome is associated with this. So a lot of syndromes to be known. As you know, dominant inheritance, deaf, if it is on a dominant one, it is going to come for a normal parent, and then deaf person gets married. 2 children have got a chance of getting deaf in their progeny if it is a dominant inheritance, and 2 children will be normal, as you know, this Mendelian laws of inheritance. In a recessive trait, for example, recessive trait is there, recessive trait is there, as you could see, like UJPK. So autosomal recessive, it can be there, like Usher syndrome, Jervell-Lang-Nielsen syndrome, okay, and then Klippel-Rinoni syndrome, okay, Pendred syndrome. So these are all the ones which are recessive. They can come 1 in 4 chances, okay. So dominant is 2 in 4 chances, recessive is 1 in 4 chances. And also there is something called as X-linked. X-linked chances are there. So X-linked inheritance, X-linked recessive mode of inheritance can be there. So what about the syndromic deafness? So we said syndromic deafness, which is genetic, as we have seen already. Half of them are genetic, is it or not? So non-syndromic and syndromic. So we have seen. So syndromic deafness, if they come, so they can be caused by different mutations on a same gene, and mutations of more than one gene can cause similar clinical phenotype. So mutations of 4 or 5 genes can cause a similar phenotype, or one gene can cause different phenotypes. So the possibility is like that. So based on these possibilities, you have got different classifications of congenital hearing loss, like autosomal dominant, autosomal recessive, X-linked, mitochondrial, So these are the things that are there as far as part of our understanding. So most commonly, it is your unknown reasons, which is 25%, recessive, which are 38%, X-linked is 2%, non-genetic is 25%, and dominant is 10%. So this is all related to your understanding of genetics of this one. And we try to see the slides so that run these slides. So genes and proteins are responsible, as you know, like hearing impairment is caused by genes also, as we have seen. Hearing loss is most frequently sensory impairment in humans. So 2/3 of them are genetic reasons. So hearing loss, 2/3 of which childhood onset hearing loss is very important. It is called as hereditary hearing impairment, and it has got a genetic cause. And 1/3 of them have got environmental factors. So 1/3 of the hearing loss have got environmental factors, like for example, torches. If we take CMV infection, torch infection, as you know, toxoplasma, okay, rubella, cytomegalovirus, syphilis, etc., as you know that. And then meningitis can cause this hearing loss. Next, acquired conductive hearing loss can be there, and even is ECMO is also causing 1/3 of the environmental cause of hearing loss, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. So hearing impairment, as we have seen, this hereditary one, if you take, so 2/3 are genetic, as we see. So 2/3 are genetic. Among this genetic, that you could see, as I already told you, syndromic is 30%, non-syndromic is 70%. Syndromic is 30%, non-syndromic is 70%. And we have seen this already, that autosomal recessive. So recessive are more common, so more commonly occurring. Dominant are less commonly occurring, and X-linked and mitochondrial also less commonly, very less commonly occurring. I say it as non-syndromic hearing impairment, NSHI, non-syndromic. Non-syndromic is based on mode of inheritance, as you could see. So DFNA, autosomal dominant, DFNB is autosomal recessive, DFNX is called as deafness because of autosomal dominant, deafness because of autosomal recessive, and deafness because of X-linked is DFNX. So these are all just names, just try to have a glimpse of these things. These are not much of importance for you, but you should have idea. That's why I've taken this PowerPoint for you people. Hearing loss is very heterologous, involving mutations in many genes. It's not like one, you've got, that CML or, the phenylketonuria, one gene responsible for something. It's not like that. It is very heterologous. There are a lot of reasons for this. How you understand is a very difficult things. So genes for non-syndromic have been categorized by functional proteins. So syndrome means one gene leading to many type of phenotypes. So many phenotypes leading to one thing is one thing like non-syndromic. So non-syndromic, which is leading to functioning of proteins. So gap junctions proteins like GJB2, connexin 26. So most common protein. So GJB2 26 is the most common one which is there for this particular hearing impairment in the case of non-syndromic. So non-syndromic is associated with connexin 26 most commonly. Just you can remember this one, GJB2 most commonly. These are the other thing which I am leaving. So myosins. So numerous conventional, unconventional myosins related to non-syndromic are all these things. So myo 1A, 3A, 7A, 15A, very much less important for you people. So unconventional myosins, they refer to non-muscle myosins. So myosin 2 subclass. So mutations in myo 7A for Usher syndrome. So something called as Usher syndrome is associated with retinitis pigmentosa. We are going to deal these syndromes, of course. So myosin, as you know, this 10 plus 5 is 15. 15 is the largest of the heavy chains. Critical factor in hair cell formation bundle. Okay, hair cell bundle staircase formation in the bundle formation, as you could see this. So myosin is important for that. There's something called as pendrin gene. As you know, pendrin gene SCL26A4. So autosomal recessive mode. So wherein you can have, I already told you what are autosomal recessive ones, UJPK. That remember like BJPK, UJPK. So Usher syndrome, Jervell-Lange-Nielsen syndrome, Pendred syndrome, and Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome. These are all the ones which are related to autosomal recessive. So we are going to see all those things, of course. So adhesion proteins like integrins, selectins, cadherins, immunoglobulin superclass family are also important. So these are all the things which are related to cadherin 23, CDH23, so related to this non-syndromic ones. So non-syndromic ones are almost like, as you could see, more than 30 mutations have been seen in Usher syndrome. Autosomal dominant, as you could see, there is no single identifiable gene in most of these things. Autosomal recessive, 50% of them have got GJB2. So GJB2, as you have seen in the previously, and 50% other genes. So X-linked genes with non-syndromic is DFNX3, characterized by conductive hearing loss and mixed conductive sensory neural hearing loss. Conductive component is because of stapes fixation. So there is a chance for always a CSF and perilymph leaks. It is called as perilymph gusher in these surgical corrections of this X-linked recessive. You should be careful in these particular things. So syndromic hearing, as you could see, syndromic, if you take syndromic, they form 30% of prelingual deafness. Autosomal dominant, autosomal recessive, X-linked syndromic. So autosomal dominant syndromic, so we have got Waardenburg syndrome most frequently. Is a congenital hearing loss most frequent of this autosomal dominant. We are going to see all these things like sensory neural hearing loss, white forelock, like Indira Gandhi's hairstyle. So white forelock, heterochromia, iris there will be there. Different colors of iris are there in one eye and the other color in the other eye. Dystopia canthorum related to something related to your dystopia. Dystopia different in positioning of the lids. Okay, GI symptoms, neural tube defects, and limb defects. So there are 4 types which you are not going to deal much in depth. So Waardenburg syndrome, you could see white forelock, heterochromia, iridis. Okay, so in a similar family it is running. This is it on autosomal dominant, as you could see. There is something called as branchio-otorenal syndrome. It is the second most common one, which is branchio-otorenal syndrome. So hearing loss, branchial cleft cysts or fistula, branchio, that is branchiomeric, otorenal. All these 3 things are there. Branchio-otorenal syndrome. So there are renal malformations, as you could see. So pit and sinuses are there, preauricular sinus are there, branchial cysts are there. So there can be mixed hearing loss. Something called as Stickler syndrome associated with cleft palate, abnormal epiphysis, vertebral anomalies, osteoarthritis, sensory neural hearing loss. You could see the Stickler syndrome child here. These are autosomal dominant. Autosomal recessive. So autosomal recessive, how do you remember? UJPK. You remember UJPK. U is Usher syndrome. J is Jervell-Lange-Nielsen syndrome. P is, as you know, the Pendred syndrome. K is the Klippel-Trenaunay syndrome. So Usher syndrome most common. So as you could see, these are all different things that are there. Type 1, type 2, type 3. We are not going to details of this. So type 1, type 2, type 3, wherein profound bilateral, moderate severe, normal hearing at birth is type 3. So vision is decreased because of Usher syndrome has got retinitis pigmentosa in them. Okay, so type 2 is retinitis pigmentosa after puberty. Visual loss is progressive. So variable in severity. Vestibular dysfunction is balance problems from birth, delayed motor milestones, normal vestibular function, normal to near normal vestibular function. So these are the Usher syndrome variants. I told you UJPK, is it or not? Autosomal recessive is UJPK. U is Usher's is over. P is Pan-Dead syndrome, which is most common, includes sensory neural hearing loss with a thyroid goiter. Perchlorate test has to be done for these things. Perchlorate test can be done for this. Okay, as you remember, Pan-Dead syndrome, as you could see, SCL226A4 gene, 7q31. Pan-Dead syndrome, you have got goiter, Pan-Red. And just remember the names. That is, I told you once again, this autosomal recessive is UJPK. J is nothing but Jervell-Lang-Nielsen syndrome, which has got hearing loss with prolonged QT interval. Prolonged QT interval is one thing which is there. Episodal syncope and death. After an affected individual have episodal syncope and death. So biotinidase deficiency is one more thing. So X-linked syndrome, if you take, so Alport syndrome, very important. Alport syndrome, progressive sensory neural hearing loss. There are eye problems, there are renal problems. Renal problems like glomerulonephritis, hematuria, and renal failure, and eye problems is lenticular and macular degenerations. So Alport syndrome, which has got bilateral progressive, most commonly is X-linked, sometimes autosomal recessive also. So sometimes autosomal recessive also. And very rarely autosomal dominant. Alport syndrome is X-linked, you have to remember. So males are more common. So Alport syndrome. So why this has become a focus of all these, syndromes and genetics is a biological perspective. It gives information about the auditory vestibular systems. The diagnostic, you can diagnose it very early. Simple genetic testing is enough for them. That's it. And genetic counseling is there. And the therapeutic, nowadays therapeutic genetics, as you know, discovery of genes leads to treatment of hearing loss. So genetics of aminoglycoside autotoxicity, as we have seen, aminoglycosides are also responsible. The mitochondrial 12S RNA is the important thing wherein mutations occur. Aminoglycosides autotoxicity is like homoplasmic. So wherein these are the sites which are not very important, highly decoding region of 12S SR RNA, okay, synthetic RNA, as you could see that. So these are the things that are there in as part of our genetics. Now, if you take one more thing, after understanding the genetics, I hope you are able to see that. Yes, PowerPoint is seen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we have seen up till now about the hearing loss, which is congenital, hearing loss, which is genetic, hearing loss, which is syndromic, hearing loss, which is non-syndromic, hearing loss, which is related to autosomal dominant, hearing loss, which is related to autosomal recessive, hearing loss, which is related to X-linked. So hearing loss, which is related to autosomal recessive, is like very important, as you could see, Usher syndrome, Jervell-Lang-Nielsen syndrome, Pendred syndrome, and Klippel-Feil syndrome. All these things have to be kept in mind before the evaluation of a depth child. So, by before birth itself, you can evaluate with those information. That is a basic information. I have not gone into the details of everything. So, evaluation of the deaf child, how would you evaluate a deaf child? Children with profound hearing loss, that is more than 90 decibels, are very important. As we have seen, profound is 90 to 110, as we have seen, more than 90 decibels. And total deafness, as you see, more than 110, we have seen. The ears which cannot hear will make the vocal cords never speak. They become deaf mute. So without hearing what is there, if you can't say amma, you can't say listen amma, you can't call amma. So as you could see, different milestones develop slowly. So this is called as deaf mutism or deaf and dumb. So they cannot speak because they never heard any word. So lesser degrees of hearing loss. For example, profound deafness, okay, they have profound hearing loss and they cannot never speak. If it is partially heard, so if you are partially hearing, you can speak partially only. So that is partial hearing loss will be there. Speech also defective will be there. They can speak but partial defective. So first 5 years of life is critical. So very important, like by birth, neonatal period is important. Okay. And then particular infant period is important, and then first 5 years is most important. Especially first 2 years among these 5 years is the most important, as you could see. So early identification is important that the child is not hearing. For that, universal neonatal screening program is done. Assessment of hearing loss, how much? When you go to brinjal shopping, they will ask you how many kgs you want. Means you say 1 kg or 2 kg. The same way, how much is the hearing loss? So that is quantification of the hearing loss. Early rehabilitation is much needed for infants and children. So how do you evaluate? Means you should know the cause. What is the cause of hearing loss? You should know the assessment of hearing in infants and children and management. These are the three things which we are going to discuss. So previous till now what I told is the Upagata, that is the introduction of all the things which I have to do done. So what are the risk factors? So you are talking about the risk factors in etiology. So according to the SPM, risk factors is something which is important and etiology is something which is perfect. Okay. Risk factors is something like, family history of deafness, prenatal infection like torches, as you know, that the toxoplasmosis rubella, cytomegalovirus, herpes infection, and syphilis. Craniofacial abnormalities. So craniofacial abnormalities, you are going to remember 2 or 3 syndromes. Number 1 is Treacher-Collins syndrome. Number 1 is Treacher-Collins syndrome. Number 2 is, as you could see, the Crouzon syndrome. Crouzon syndrome. So Treacher-Collins syndrome, as I already told you, mandibulofacial dysostosis, first arch syndrome. First arch, what are all the structures which I have told in the class that day? You have to remember mandibulofacial dysostosis. And Crouzon syndrome is craniofacial dysostosis, as you could see over here. And whether birth weight, you have to think about the birth weight. That is 1500 grams, that is less than 1500 grams, you have to have an idea on hearing loss. Hyperbilirubinemia, more than 20, leading to Kernick tears, leading to hearing loss, leading to vestibular nuclear damage, cochlear nuclear damage. If the child is having neonatal jaundice, you should keep it in mind. Neonatal jaundice, never forget that. Okay. Ototoxic medication, even the mother taking ototoxic medications, the child might have some problem, that you should keep it in mind. Next, bacterial meningitis, okay, it can affect that, and then it can directly affect the eighth cranial nerve and can lead to hearing loss. APGAR score, as you could see, 0 to 4 at 1, appearance, pulse, grimace, activity, respiration, that we by heart in pediatrics. And APGAR score of 0 to 4 at 1 minute or 0 to 6 at 5 minutes is very important, as you could see over here. And mechanical ventilation, if you are ventilating for more than 5 days, then you should be in a problem always. So you should be in a problem. Class. Hello. I'm in a class, call you later. So stigma associated with a syndrome known to include sensory neural or connective hearing loss. So any stigmas that are related to syndromes, you should keep it in mind. So what are the etiologies if you can take, like the prenatal factors? So before birth, during birth, and after birth. Prenatal is infant factors and mother factors, as you know, and perinatal as during birth, and then postnatal factors. Prenatal factors like infant factors with inner ear abnormalities, you should have it in mind. Inner ear anomalies due to genetic or non-genetic. Genetic or non-genetic is already discussed. Anomalies can be there as inner ear alone, which is non-syndromic or a part of syndrome. So inner ear alone as a part of non-syndromic or as a part of syndrome. The anomalies of the inner ear may involve, inner ear alone as a part of syndromic may involve membranous labyrinth or membranous and bony labyrinth. Remember, membranous labyrinth is just like, the outer coat, inner coat, and bony labyrinth is like outer coat. You have covered otosclerosis. I know that you are done with otosclerosis. Membranous labyrinth is like just like like shirt that you wear, and bony labyrinth is just like a sweater that you wear, or overcoat that you wear. Okay, membranous labyrinth and bony labyrinth, anything can be abnormal. What are the different types of dysplasia that can occur? Okay, so non-syndromic things that can occur is Sheeby's dysplasia. What is Sheeby's dysplasia? Sheeby is cochleosaccular dysplasia. Remember, Sheeby is cochleosaccular dysplasia. It is the most common dysplasia, autosomal recessive. Anyhow, it is non-syndromic only, seen in cochlea and cochleosaccular dysplasia. Bony and superior membranous labyrinth are normal. Okay. Cochleosaccular dysplasia. So this is the inferior, pars inferior, is it or not? Cochleosaccular, the pars inferior, and pars superior is the utricle and semicircular canal. Superior. US is always superior. You should keep it in your mind like that. Alexander's dysplasia. Alexander dysplasia, remember BTC, basal turn of cochlea, membranous cochlea is absent. Basal turn is related to higher frequencies. Yes or no? Basal turn is related to higher frequencies. When higher frequencies are related, higher frequencies are lost. So residual hearing can be exploited by amplification with lower frequencies. So you need to use high frequency hearing aids for this Alexander dysplasia. Okay. Bing-Sieberman's dysplasia. Bing-Sieberman's dysplasia, complete absence of membranous labyrinth. It is a complete absence of membranous labyrinth. Bing-Sieberman's dysplasia. Michael's aplasia. Michael's aplasia. So previously till now it are here all dysplasias. So aplasia is complete absence of bony and membranous labs. And the name itself says aplasia is bony and membranous, both are there. So shut is not there and sweater is also not there. So both are not there. So even the petrous apex is absent, but external and middle ears are completely unaffected. So development of inner ear is not related to development of external and middle ear, as we have seen. External and middle ear, they are developed from the branchial apparatus. So inner ear, it develops from the neuroepithelium. That is a separate thing. Okay, separate thing that is from the brain epithelium. So in external ear and middle ear are only from the external branchial apparatus epithelium, as you know that. Okay. Even the petrous apex is absent, and external ear and middle ear are completely normal. But internal ear is not at all there. That is called as Michael's aplasia. No hearing aids are useful. When nothing is there inside, you cannot put anything inside. So there is no use. So Mondini's dysplasia, there is something called as Mondini's dysplasia. BTC is present. So BTC is absent is Alexander's dysplasia. BTC is present and cochlea has got 1.5 turns. So there is an incomplete partition between the saccule due to the absence of osseous spiral lamina. So it can be unilateral or bilateral. Mondini's dysplasia can be associated with Pendred syndrome, Waardenburg syndrome, branchio-otorenal syndrome, Treacher-Collins syndrome, Wildervanck syndrome. These are all the associations. They're all associations. So Pendred, as I told you, UJPK, remember, Pendred is autosomal recessive, as you could see. And then, Waardenburg, Wildervanck is X-linked. Wildervanck is X-linked. Treacher-Collins is autosomal dominant. Branchio-otorenal is also autosomal dominant, you should remember that. So enlarged vestibular aqueduct syndrome. Vestibular aqueduct is enlarged, that is more than 2 millimeters, seen in T2 MRI, causes progressive sensory neural hearing loss along with vertigo. So semicircular canal malformations can be there. Superior and lateral semicircular canal malformations can be there, identified by imaging techniques. So what are the syndromic hearing loss? Previously, all the non-syndromic associations. So syndromic is, so you have got different names of it. The syndrome is named as syndrome only. Waardenburg syndrome, Usher syndrome, Jervell-Lange-Nielsen syndrome, Pendred syndrome, Alport syndrome. With sensory neural hearing loss. With conductive hearing loss, they are presenting as Treacher-Collins syndrome, that is called as mandibulofacial dysostosis. I already told you as first arch syndrome, Treacher-Collins syndrome, first arch syndrome. So mandibulofacial dysostosis. So Apert syndrome, Down syndrome, Pierre-Robin sequence, and Crozon syndrome. Crozon syndrome is craniofacial dysostosis. In Crozon syndrome, the nose is like a parrot. It is called as Sitiaco-Rayna. Remember that. Sitiaco-Rayna is associated with Crozon syndrome. So they're all related to sensory neural hearing loss, and the mixed Klippel-Feil syndrome. Klippel-Feil syndrome, wherein vertebral anomalies will be there. Oculovertebral anomalies will be there. So Klippel-Feil syndrome. See all these syndromes. Wilder-Vanck syndrome. See, as I already told you, this is X-linked. And branchio-otorenal syndrome. And Stickler syndrome. Van der Hoef syndrome is already there in your, yeah. Yeah. Please, there is some amount of background noise. Mute yourself. The mics are producing some sounds with disturbance. Kindly mute yourself. Okay. So as you could see, Van der Hoef syndrome, it is already there in, loose sclera will be there, osteogenesis imperfecta will be there, and autosclerosis will be there. As you could see, Van der Hoef syndrome, autosclerosis, loose sclera, and all those things, autosclerosis will be there, and osteogenesis imperfecta, as you can remember that. So these are all the different things. They seem to be difficult. So non-syndromic are all, I want to just put the names at a time. Non-syndromic are all Sheebies, Alexanders, Bing Sieberman, Michaels, Mondini's, enlarged vestibular aqueduct, semicircular canal malformation. Syndromic are Waardenburg syndrome, I also told you, white Photochronia iridis, so dystopia claustrum. Usher syndrome is related to retinitis pigmentosa. So there is some background noise. Please mute yourself. Please kindly mute yourself. There is some amount of background noise. Sugali Deepti, kindly mute yourself. Yes. Sugali Deepti.
Tell us so that your mic is only creating.
Yeah, your mic is producing some problem. Kindly mute yourself. Okay. I hope you understood. Yes. So these are all the syndromes that are there till now. We will try to deal with the single syndrome as it is. So Waardenburg syndrome already say there. White forelock, heterochromia iridis, vitiligo, dystopia, canthorum, sensory neural hearing loss. You could see heterochromia iridis here. So Cruzon syndrome, I told you, Sitacorina, remember like this. Frog eyes, like exophthalmos is there. Hypertelorism, there are telorism, like your eyes are both separate. Parrot beak like nose. Mandibular prognathism. Premature closure of cranial sutures with mental retardation, it is there. Mental retardation is there in the case of Cruzon syndrome. Apert syndrome, Prestal. I'll tell you among all the syndrome, very easy to remember. UJPK are autosomal recessive. Okay, Wilder-Vanck is X-linked. Wilder-Vanck is X-linked. Rest all are autosomal dominant. You can write it like that. Except UJPK, which is autosomal recessive. So Apert syndrome is autosomal dominant. Syndactyly, all the features of Cruzon syndrome, especially with stapes fixation. Syndactyly is the this fusion of these fingers. So conductive hearing loss and with the stapes fixation, they have got stapes fixation. So Down syndrome, as you know, trisomy 21, you might have done many times. Microcephaly, mental retardation, delayed development, short stature, epicanthal folds, as you could see here. Stenosis of the external ear is stenosis, high incidence of serous otitis media. Atlantoaxial instability will be there in Down syndrome, as you could see. Down syndrome is very important, trisomy 21. Treacher-Collins syndrome is also very important. Most of the times it is as 1 in 50,000 malpositions auricles. You could see on the malpositions auricles with and anti-mongoloid slant eyes are like, instead of being like this, they are like this. Anti-mongoloid slant, malformed pinna, external article nerve. First arch, all are defective. Like Malleus and Incus will be absent, ossicular anomalies. And conductive hearing loss is very common because of absence of Malleus and Incus. Hearing aids are effective because stapes is intact. They have got normal intelligence. Cruzon syndrome has got abnormal intelligence, whereas Treacher-Collins syndrome has got normal intelligence. Remember, teacher is like teacher now with normal normal intelligence. And we could see the maternal factors like, toxoplasmosis, rubella, cytomegalovirus, herpes, and torches infection, as we have seen all these things. Drugs during pregnancy like SGT, as I told you, SGT are vestibulotoxic, is it or not? And amikacin, quinine, and chloroquine are there to the pregnant mother to cross the placental barrier and damage the cochlea. Thalidomide not only affects the ear but also causes abnormalities of limbs, heart, face, lip, and palate. So it is called as phocomelia. As you know, thalidomide causes phocomelia along with ear. Radiation to mother in the first trimester. Other factors like nutritional deficiencies, diabetes, toxemia, thyroid deficiency, all this thyroid deficiency, as all these things are very important. And it is stylish for nowadays girls to drink alcohol, but maternal alcoholism, there is a teratogenic one and developing auditory system. The children can be deaf by birth, so you have to think before you drink. So other perinatal causes. So there are prenatal causes, perinatal anoxia. So decrease in blood supply to the cochlear nucleus or a decrease in the oxygen levels causes hemorrhages and then leads to anoxia. Placenta previa, prolonged labor, cord around the neck, okay, prolapsed cord, all can cause fetal distress, leads to anoxia, leads to hearing loss. So prematurity and low birth weight, as you have already seen, 1500 grams less than that, and birth injuries with forceps delivery can cause intracranial hemorrhage. As you know, neonatal jaundice greater than 20 causes cochlear nuclear damage, neonatal meningitis, neonatal sepsis, time spent in the neonatal ICU, more than 5 days mechanical ventilation is dangerous. So postnatal causes like genetic. So deafness is genetic, manifests slowly in the late childhood or adult life. So genetic ones previously were the non-genetic ones which we have seen already. So deafness may occur as in familial progressive. I told you familial progressive sensory neural hearing loss is one entity wherein genetic deafness can be there. Other association with syndromes like Alport syndrome, wherein renal problems will be there, as we have seen. So as you have seen, also eye problems will be there. Klippel-Feil syndrome, wherein Klippel-Feil syndrome, we have got vertebral anomalies. Hurler syndrome also related to this one. So non-genetic causes like viral infections, MMA, that is measles, mumps, varicella, influenza, meningitis, encephalitis. Secretory otitis media also can cause hearing loss. So most important in children, secretory otitis media is one of the important reasons for hearing loss. Next, ototoxic drugs. So all the ototoxic drugs which I have done already, trauma like fracture temporal bone and middle ear surgery and perilymph leak can cause that. And noise-induced hearing loss, as we have already discussed in the previous class, you can have that. So assessment of hearing before the child is born, you have got all the genetic things which are very much advanced. But once the child is born, you have got something like, remember, neonatal screening procedures, behavioral observational audiometry, distraction techniques, conditioning techniques, objective tests. You know these objective tests already is a auditory brainstem, that is BERA, OAE. I told you already, BERA and OAE and impedance audiometry. These are all the objective tests you can do before, without the person knowing, we can get in. BERA gives BERA gives the entity of whether the auditory pathway is intact or not, intactness of auditory pathway like E. coli MA is there or not. Autoacoustic emissions, as you know, outer hair cells, whether they are functioning or not, can be tested. So auditory pathway is by this, outer hair cells by autoacoustic emissions. And impedance audiometry, as you know, it classifies the conductive deafness. It helps in the stapedial reflex also. So these can be done at any stage, more than even just born child also you can do this test. Conditional techniques like visual reinforcement audiometry. You are reinforcing with this, with that. Okay, reinforcing with this, with that. So for example, you are reinforcing. What is visual reinforcement audiometry? Okay, so you hear that if you get first rank, you will be given bench car. Okay, in the third year. Okay, after passing the third year, for example, you are visually reinforcing the bench car in your mind. You are keeping something in your ear, like you will get first rank, and then you will get that car. You keep them and match them. You try to have some, whether you are hearing or not. For example, I'm telling you, you are doing it for a child of 2 to 5 years. So play audiometry is done typically for 2 to 5 years. So play audiometry is like when you ask the child to put a ball in a box, okay, ball in a box, or put a ring on a stick, okay, or just put a mask. Nowadays, corona, as you can say, you ask them to pick up a mask and put it on your face. Okay, that is also there. You can do that. So play audiometry, based on that, how much you are able to hear, you will be testing. That's 2 to 5 years. Visual reinforcement audiometry, conditional techniques are also for that only. So distraction techniques is nearly for 6 months to 2 years. Distraction techniques you will be doing for 6 months to 2 years. So conditioning techniques like visual reinforcement audiometry and play audiometry and distraction techniques. Okay, distraction, you are going to distract the child's attention. Okay, so that is going to be the distraction technique. Next, BOA, that is behavioral observation audiometry. So what is behavioral observation audiometry? That is change in the behavior. As you know, Morse reflex, when a sound of more than 90 decibel comes, the child reacts suddenly as if she is having some problem. She will be reacting with that. Is the Morse reflex. And cochleopalpebral reflex, when sound is heard, the eyes blink. So when sound is heard, eyes blink. That is cochleopalpebral reflex, which is also called as CPR. Okay. Cessation reflex. Whatever work they are doing, more than say 90 decibel, for example, they are playing, suddenly sound is there, dumb. The child stops and then suddenly startles. So as these three things are like behavioral changes and observation audiometry. And if you take the neonatal screening procedures, whether they are getting aroused or not with a loud sound, out of 3 times, they should get aroused by 2 times. That is arousal test. Next, auditory response cradle. So the auditory responses are seen with a cradle. That is auditory. It is called ARC test. Next, ABR and OAE can be done at any point of time. So visual reinforcement audiometry and play audiometry conditioning techniques from 2 to 5 years. Distraction techniques from 6 months to 2 years. And these are all can be done by birth itself. So all these tests are very important. We are going to deal each and everything slowly. So screening procedures are done for high-risk individuals only, based on infants' behavioral response. Screening procedures are done for high-risk people only. Next is arousal test. A high-frequency narrow-band noise were presented for 2 seconds in light sleep. So arousal test, whether arising or not, twice out of 3 is a good one. Okay. 2 out of 3 times is a normal one. Auditory response gradually, I told you, is it or not? The behavioral movement, that is the trunk, limb movement, head jerk, and respiration are all seen. And auditory stimulation monitored by transducers. Okay, they are monitored by transducers. So they can be screening moderate or severe profound hearing loss. Imagine the baby in a cradle and then it is being monitored for hearing. Next, Bo, I already told you, behavioral observation audiometry. The change in the behavior is observed, alerting cessation or widening of eyes and facial grimacing. I told you the Morose reflex, cochleopalpebral reflex, and cessation reflex already. More than 90 decibel sound you are going to give. So cochleopalpebral reflex, cessation reflex. Okay. Distraction techniques is used for 6 to 7 months old. Okay, as I told you, distraction is done with a sound. So turns the head for a sound. Turns the head for a sound. That is, in the mother's lap, the patient is the child is made to sit. Assistant distracts the child attention while examiner produces a sound. So there are two persons that are needed. So mother is in the child and assistant distracts, and then the audiologist tries to see it. So high frequency rattle like 8 kilohertz, or narrow band noise like 500 to 4000 hertz, or a whispering sound like as you do in the class, that can be done to child, or frequency hum can be used. So there is a distraction technique, whether distracting or not. You call the child who is sitting in the mother's lap, you say whether they are able to see or not. High frequency sound you will be talking, and low frequency sound you will be talking. What are the condition techniques? Conditioning techniques, you are conditioning the child like visual response reinforcement audiometry. I already told you. So VRA for 2 months, 6 months to 2 years. I already told you this one. So reinforced, what is the reinforcement done? It's by flashing a light or animated toy. I told you the Binskar example for you, is it or not? So if you passing third year, you will be given Binskar. That will be the thing, that is Binskar is flashed in front of you, and you will be told you read well, you will get it. So then you will be like almost like tested like a child, is it or not? This test helps to determine the hearing threshold using standard audiometric techniques. So audiological stimulus is given through headphones or insert phones. So outside phones or insert phones. So you should go to the details of this. If you have to go to details, you have to become audiologist, which is not needed. You should have a concept, that's it. Play audiometry, as you could see, from 2 to 5 years, I already told you. So every threshold is given by sound signal, and then you place a plastic block in a bucket, or putting a box, a marble in the box, all the play things that are being done. So 2 to 5 years. Objective tests. So what are the objective tests? So anytime the patient's response is not needed, that is objective test. That is evoked response audiometry. What is the evoked response audiometry? Like electrocochleography. Electrocochleography, you have to test the cochlea, like you have seen in the Meniere's disease. You are inserting an electrode towards the cochlea, and sensitivity is tested. For every test, you can test the sensitivity, hearing sensitivity, that is nearly 20 decibels, but it is an invasive procedure. Whereas ABR or brainstem response audiometry, BERA, ABR is nothing but your BERA. It is not a direct test of hearing, but it correlates with pure tone thresholds. What are the identifiable waveforms? That is 20 decibels above the behavioral threshold. You need not remember these numbers, as you should see that the electrocochleography and BERA are the evoked response audiometry. Like the lion is sleeping and you are evoking, is it or not? That is the same example I gave you. So evoked response audiometry are electrocochleography and BERA. So nearly 20 decibel above the behavioral threshold, they'll be doing that. So ABR provides a specific information, so and can be separately testing. So you can know the response of auditory system, that is E. coli MA through BERA, and also you can get what is the value of your hearing loss or hearing threshold. So electrocochleography gives the response of the cochlea only. Okay. So BERA is an objective test. So even under sedation, or even in the ICU, or even diagnose the brainstem, is it or not? Brainstem death also we do the BERA, is it or not? So the person's cooperation is not at all needed. It is a very good screening test. So definitive hearing assessment. So BERA is a part of your universal neonatal screening program. Every Wednesday you come to our department, there will be children coming from the pediatrics department, just born children, whether they are having hearing problem or not, they will be tested. That is universal neonatal screening program. Audiologist will be doing daily. You will be staying for some time, but on Wednesday you will be staying for more time, because of this number of children, normal children coming for tests. That is screening test. Otoacoustic emissions, as you know that the cochlea is going to have hair cells which is going to emit some radiation, that is otoacoustic, chemicals. I already told you that day. So otoacoustic emissions are absent in ears with hearing loss exceeding 30 decibels. If hearing loss is there more than 30 decibels, this transient otoacoustic emissions are not there, as it you know. So if distortion product, there are two types, is it or not? So evoked is the transient and distortion product emissions to F1 minus F2, that you know that. So the hearing loss exceeds 50 decibels, DPOAE are not there. So impedance audiometry, as you know, stepedial reflex more than 100 decibels, you can say. So absence of a acoustic reflex with a normal tympanometry. So hearing loss suggests the possibility of profound degree. As you should see that 70 decibels is the hearing sensation needed for that stepedial reflex for the elicitation. Okay, and then absence of acoustic reflex, but an abnormal tympanogram generally indicates a conductive hearing loss. If a tympanogram is abnormal, so impedance audiometry has got two components. One is the tympanometry and then acoustic reflex. If tympanometry is abnormal, it is related to conductive deafness. Acoustic reflex can be also abnormal. If tympanometry is normal tympanometry means tympanum is nothing but your middle ear. The middle ear is normal means the abnormal thing can be there in the hearing apparatus only. So that is acoustic reflex is the second part that you are seeing. So OAE and ABR are providing the best results. Nowadays, this impedance audiometry is not much done for the children. Okay. So after getting into idea of whether how much is the hearing loss, if it is more than 90 decibels or not profound hearing loss, you are going to have a management strategy. So we discussed about the hearing loss etiology, the hearing loss genetic and non-genetic causes, okay, syndromic and non-syndromic, and we know the causes and how do you manage these things. It is essential to know the degree and type of hearing loss. So whether it is sensory neural or mixed or conductive, you should know how much is the hearing loss, you should know. So whether associated with blindness, other associations also will be there with blindness and mental retardation are there or not, like as in the case of your Cruzon syndrome. So and whether hearing loss is prelingual. There are two types of hearing loss, prelingual and postlingual. Once you know the language and all and you lose the hearing, that is not a big issue. Postlingual is postlingual deafness. So after the child is trained with all the things, if you are losing the hearing, that is not a big problem. It is easier for the child to cope up. But before the development of the speech itself, there is prelingual. So before 2 years or 5 years maximum. So 2 years is the first peak important period. 2 years, before 2 years only you can go for the cochlear implantation. In such a thing, you can go for the cochlear implantation and give him a plus point. Etiology of hearing loss remains obscure in about half of the cases. Half of the times you don't know what is the reason for the hearing loss. So we are idiopathic. That is, we become idiots and we say idiopathic. Is it or not? So aims of habilitation of any of the hearing impaired children are the development of speech and language and adjustment to the society. So okay, you have got everything normal. You ask for big properties and luxury life. If you have got hearing impairment, what you pray God is you just have a normal speech, normal language, and normal adjustment. That is enough for me, my dear. You will say like that. Okay. So what's the most important thing is development of speech and language and adjustment to the society. Of course, there are people who have become collectors or doctors and big sports persons also with some amount of hearing loss with cochlear implant. So it is a correctable thing, and you should keep it in mind. This cochlear implantation is one of the costliest surgery. So each implant costs about 5 to 10 lakhs rupees. In between 5 to 10 lakhs, you have to spend for one implant. So it is a implant which can be given for a child, so which can help the hearing. So parental guidance is most important. So it's not parental, it's parental guidance. Okay, parental guidance. Every child is born deaf means parents will not accept. You have to counsel them. It's a very big sympathetic responsibility, and you have to accept the disability and care for it. So impairment, disability, handicap. We have been discussing all those things. So life has got a lot of problems like diseases. You have to understand the disease and cope up the disease accordingly, and you should have a disability limitation and rehabilitation. First is disability limitation and rehabilitation. As you know, the disability adjusted life years, and then rehabilitation is how the child is going to live or cope up with the problem that he or she has got. So that is a habilitation of the deaf demands a lot from the parents. Okay, because the patient is a child. You have to have the consent of this parent also, and there should be periodic replacement of the hearing aids. If it is a normal or normal ear, nothing is needed. Minimal hearing loss, you can go for hearing aids. and change of ear modes as the child grows, follow-up visits for re-evaluation and education at home. So I have seen one person in a train wherein whose child was born deaf, but that fellow, it was like I had a movie experience. That father is so, adamant that he was very much. You can call it as adamant, or or very much, having the positive vibes that he trained the child for all the sign language, and he brought up the child till the level of degree, and got a job like that. So that parents should be very much motivated for this aspect to be done. So education at home is very important. So hearing aids, as you could see, most deaf children has got very, most of the times hearing aids are enough. Do not go for cochlear implantation, etc. Hearing aids can be prescribed as early as possible, but you have to recognize the deafness and then you have to go for it very fast. If necessary, binaural hearing aids are also needed. Hearing aids and lip reading is also very important. We are going to deal hearing aids in one class and cochlear implants in another class, so that you will understand with this background knowledge. Development of speech and language. So communication is a two-way process. Okay, communication is like a two-way process. So suddenly reception of information, and reception of information is one thing which you have to see here. Okay, these are the receptive skills, reception of information, and expressive skills. Okay, expressive skills. Reception is by means of VAT. As you know, it's not VAT 69, it's VAT. Visual faculty number 1, auditory faculty number 2, tactile faculty. Visual faculty, that is eyes, auditory faculty, that is ears, and tactile is by touch. So if tactile is needed, you need to have a vibrotactile aid. Tactile is gone, vibrotactile aid. If auditory faculty is gone, there are two things that can be done. Number one is hearing aid, which we are going to take in one class, and cochlear implants, which we are going to take in other class. Very important, very easy also. If visual faculty is gone, you should know, that braille is written language, lip reading, sign language is also very important. Okay. Sign language, of course, for visual faculty, if you are going to there, that is braille is, and these are all written language, lip reading, and all are needed for this understanding of the speech only. So how do you communicate by oral speech, by talking or speaking? And how do you say for this hearing impaired persons, there will be special finger spelling or sign language. Okay, sign language will be there for this hearing impaired persons. And written and communication. So you search for sign language in the internet. There is a lot of things that are there. So there are a lot of movies that are related to sign language also. Okay. Once you go back like this, so written communication is also there, like electronic media. And of course, nowadays the expressive skills and receptive skills are dominated by this Android generation. Okay. So development of speech and language, as you could see, if in the case of hearing impaired, auditory faculty is poor. So audition is poor. So you depend upon visual and then tactile cues. Okay. So visual, auditory, and tactile. Visual, auditory, and tactile. What is this VAT? So VAT is visual, auditory, and tactile. Thus, for proper communication, we have to improve the hearing, number one, by amplification or cochlear implants. So we might have to go for hearing aids or cochlear implants. In the absence of feasibility of auditory faculty, we have to go for vibrotactile measures or visual measures. So lip reading and all those skills. So there are n number of opportunities for n to the power of n number of problems. Okay. So as you know that. So auditory oral communication. This is by a normal person, best way of communication. In deaf, they cannot moderately severe hearing loss or with postlingual. So if already they have developed the speech and all and they lost the hearing, then it is very easy. Auditory oral communication. Hearing aids are the best thing that you can do. Okay. Lip reading, face reading, and natural gestures, hand and body. Okay. Like in that movie, the person says, I am blind, but I am trained. So I am deaf, but I am trained to lead all the lip reading and all. You should keep it in mind, all those things. Okay. Expressive skills is encouraged through oral speech. So you should ask them to speak slowly and then understand and then answer whatever is question. Next, manual communication. It is for sign language or finger spelling method, but the disadvantage is that abstract ideas are difficult to express. So difficult ideas are difficult to express. The simple things that you can say namaste, as you can say thank you. So in sign language, you say thank you like this. So this is like say thank you in the sign language. So the communication skills are to be learnt. Total communication, if everything is lost, VAT is gone, so visual, auditory, and tactile is gone. So difficult to develop, but you can have oral speech, lip reading, sign language. All children with prelingual severe to profound deafness, they can have vibrotactile aids for tactile sensation. Okay. The others are attached with the hand and so what are these aids? So these aids are attached to the child's hand or sternum, and vibrations of speech are perceived through tactile sensation. Education of the deaf. So there are residential and day schools, special deaf schools are there. So National Institute of Hearing Handicap, there is something there in Boinpalli you can have there. NIHH, it is called as NIHH in Boinpalli. Okay, you can refer anyone who is having problem to there directly. NIHH. So some deaf children or moderate hearing loss can go to normal schools with preferential seating. If some mild deafness is there, you can go for forward seating, front seating. Okay, front seating. And radio hearing devices are there wherein the teacher wears a microphone and the child has got that like your Bluetooth device, like you're putting inside your ear, and you can receive it and then amplify it and you can listen to it. With this system, the child can hear the teacher's voice and then without being disturbed by the environmental noises. So vocational guidance is very important. So you should have someone, to give training and vocational guidance. So deaf people, if you have got some loss of faculty like deafness or blindness, their other faculties are good. That they have got good behavior and they are hardworking. They are sincere most of the times. And then given an opportunity, they can show their ability. They can prove themselves. There are many people who are deaf and then yet living normally. So this is how you have to go on keeping understanding this deafness and all. So very important in this chapter is that every point is a question, but very difficult to understand. You have to read many a times. That's why I'm trying to repeat it many a times, as you could see over here. And these genetic and non-genetic hearing reasons are also very important. Among with this, based on this understanding, only you have got the understanding of cochlear implants and you have got the understanding of your hearing aids. So non-genetic, as you could see, the non-syndromic, as you could see, remember I am repeating once again, Sheeby's dysplasia or cochleosacral dysplasia, Alexander's dysplasia, Bing-Sieberman's dysplasia, Michael's aplasia, complete absence, aplasia is complete absence, Mondini's dysplasia, Baselton is absent, enlarged vestibular aqueduct syndrome, as you could see here, and semicircular canal malformation. There are 7 things which are non-syndromic. And syndromic, as you could see, Waardenburg syndrome, Usher syndrome. You remember UJPK, autosomal recessive, and very early. The one thing which develop late in life, congenital deafness that can develop is Usher syndrome and this Stickler syndrome and all, Alport syndrome. This can develop very early in the life, like just by birth itself, they can develop the hearing loss. And Jervell-Lang syndrome, prolonged QT interval, Pandred syndrome, all is there in one paper in the book. There are nearly 16 syndromes that are given. So Van der Hoos syndrome, as you know, that you have got, white, as you have got blue sclera and osteogenesis imperfecta and otosclerosis, and branchioautorenal syndrome, and Willer-Wang syndrome, something which is X-linked recessive one thing. Klippel-Feil syndrome associated with the vertebral oculovertebral anomalies. Vertebral anomalies, so the neck will be very short like that. Cruzan syndrome, as you know, Sitacorina, as you could see that, and then protrusion of the jaw and the craniofacial dysostosis. Treacher-Collins syndrome is mandibulofacial dysostosis. Apert syndrome is associated with your conductive hearing loss along with renal problems. As you know, Down syndrome, everybody should know. Pierre-Robin sequence is also important. Pendred syndrome associated with the particular this thyroidism, hypothyroidism, and then you have got enlargement of the thyroid gland as Pendrin gene, as you could say. Jervell-Lang syndrome, prolonged QT interval, Usher syndrome along with retinitis pigmentosa, Waardenburg syndrome, white forelock, heterochromia, iridis, dystopia canthorum, and hearing loss, sensorineural hearing loss, autosomal dominant type, and Alport syndrome, as you know that already. And all these things to be multiple times read, and then I think you have to write it on paper and paste it in front of your mirror whenever you are shaving or whenever you are doing brushing or whenever you are trying to groom your hair. You have to look on these syndromes, then only you will be able to tell whenever you are asked in the examination. They're very difficult to remember, or else you have to play characters in a class that you have got that syndrome and you have got this syndrome, and you will remember it forever. Of course, in a class you would have done it, but in an internet class it is very difficult. You would have role played the characters of the syndromes. But anyhow, the syndromes are to be remembered until you pass the examination, and you should have basic things in the mind. I hope this class is understood a bit for people sitting over there. Any doubts you can ask. Hello. Hello. Hello.
No doubt, sir.
No doubt.
Yes, sir.
Know everything. Then what is Waardenburg syndrome? You tell me. No doubt you have no doubts. Or you know all the doubts. KNOW, know all the doubts. So next class is going to be about the hearing aids and cochlear implants on the facial nerve, because other tumors is on the acoustic neuroma, that is 8th cranial nerve tumor. We will deal about the 7th cranial nerve also, facial nerve. And then otherwise you have got three chapters more. By this month end,